Countdown begins for the markets with meticulous research and analysis designed to help you capitalize on the trading day. Beaming live from the CNBC TV18 Motilal Oswal studio.
Good morning, hello and welcome to Bazaar Morning Call. We are coming to you as always from the CNBC TV18 Motilal Oswal studios. There's a lot to talk. There are more tariff headlines that have come through, but markets, let's see if they can remain as unfazed as they have throughout the course of the last couple of days. I'm Surbhi Upadhyay. With me as always, Nigel D'Souza. And in a minute, we'll have Prashant joining in as well. Morning, Nigel.
Well, morning, Surbhi. It's a Friday, always a good day, right? And I think though the headline is that the markets could open a little bit lower, maybe by the end of today, it will not be so bad. So let's see how it goes.
Okay, so let's take stock of what, we've got on the screen. And it's typical Trump style because India time, you go to bed at around, 12 o'clock. I was awake till 12. Okay. And the world was a calm place. It was fairly steady.
Typically, you go to sleep at 10:30, 11, but it's okay.
But it's okay. But that's what I'm saying. Even between 12 o'clock and morning 5:30, so much can change, right? News flow is so hectic that we've woken up this morning to fresh news on tariffs. So, two separate tariff headlines. One is this number on Canada that he is speaking about. Now talking about 35% tariffs on Canada. And then there is another range that he's given that most tariffs on most other countries, he's saying, will be between 15 to 20%. Remember, as of now, whichever countries have not got these so-called letters, they're at baseline 10%. So the directional move on tariffs seems to be higher. Let's actually look at how markets have reacted to this. So the first reaction that's coming in, if you look at Asian markets, it's all right. Look at the Hong Kong market, for instance, it's marching along. And Hong Kong is not the only one. If I look at other regional markets as well, whether it's Singapore or whether it's Nikkei, there's no major slide across any of the markets. In fact, there's more green than red across Asia. Japan is absolutely flat, or around the flat line. The mainland China market, the Shanghai market, is also up about 0.6%. There is, however, a reaction in the U.S. futures. U.S. markets last night ended in consolidation, but the bias was positive. You had the Nasdaq, the S&P 500, the Dow largely higher. But now if you look at the futures, they're down about 0.5%. So there is that sense of caution that's coming in. In fact, from 0.5% of a decline, now it's about 0.4%, 0.3%, depending on which index you're looking at. The dollar moved slightly higher, but that's not only after this tariff announcement. Anyway, the dollar was well bid last night in U.S. trading action. So the dollar index is now creeping back to the 98 handle. That's what we have on the screen. So the short point is the markets continue to be largely unfazed. The tariff announcements are coming, they're going, and maybe that is why. That's why I chose to put up that part of, Mr. Trump's tweet, where he's again giving, a window of negotiation, so to speak. He's saying if Canada works with me to stop the flow of fentanyl, we will perhaps consider an adjustment to this letter. So that's, and maybe that's why markets are not too perturbed. Just a quick final point on U.S. action. The rhetoric, between Jerome Powell and the White House just refuses to die down. And now we have a fresh salvo being fired. The White House is accusing the Fed chair of mismanaging the Federal Reserve. Specifically, there's a comment that's coming from Russell Vought, who is in charge of the Office of Management and Budget. And he's saying that Powell has been misleading the U.S. Congress about how much they're spending on the renovation of the Federal Reserve building itself. So politics around that is at another level. But anyway, just putting that on the table for reference. I'll come to the India cues in just a bit, which are extremely important. But Prashant is also joining in. Good morning, Prashant. Lots of tariff headlines for the market today.
Good morning, Nigel. Morning. I was stuck behind a bus. And, there was nowhere to go ahead.
Sounds like the market, stuck behind a bus.
I was going to come to that. It's exact perfect kind of, right?
Perfect phrase for the market,
yeah. I think you summarized it very well in terms of some of the stuff which is happening. I'll just take 1 minute to really, say what is the new thing, because Mr. Trump, the president, speaks every day, every night, every morning. So this is the new stuff, right? So Trump tariff comments early this morning in focus. By the way, there is a market reaction. S&P futures were actually flat. They are down. And you also have the dollar, which has perked up a little bit more. So those are the two clear reactions. The Canadian dollar, for example, has come off a little bit, but it's not a disaster. So Trump has said to him, he's saying he's going to impose 35% tariffs on goods from Canada effective the 1st of August. 35%, but he's saying, well, we're going to negotiate. We'll see if it's higher than this, lower than this. So that kind of leaves room for, nobody's going to put pen to paper and say, well, 35% impact on Canadian exports. Not as yet, because no one knows whether this will go through or not. But 35% is much higher because the number was 25% earlier in terms of what markets were penciling in. There was also a 21st July deadline for US-Canada. So this is suddenly, thrown out of the window. Trump, of course, is saying that he's also going to impose blanket 15 to 20% tariffs across the board. Where does that come from? I mean, is that number was 10%. Now he's saying 15, 20%. But again, I mean, if the market were to take that seriously, you would have a serious risk-off across the board. But that's not the case. And I think that's quite symptomatic of the way the market is treating a lot of the commentary which is coming through. He's also said that EU and Canada, etc., will get tariff letters today. That is tonight, our time, US morning. And there's a major statement on Russia, which is coming up on Monday. So a fair bit. As I said, US equity futures reacted to this down. Dollar index perked up last night. I mean, I think in that sense, because all this has happened this morning in terms of commentary, the action kind of takes a bit of a backseat. It's not as if very much happened. The S&P was up about 0.25%. The dollar index, nothing. The 10-year also, absolutely nothing. Both were flat. The only other indicator was oil, which fell about just under 2%. We're back at about just under $69 a barrel on Brent oil prices. You also had weekly jobless claims, which kind of did not tell us this or that, indicated stable labor market conditions. But just this comment, right? Governor Waller of the Fed said, well, he basically said that I'm out of sync with the consensus at FOMC. And he said, I argued we cut in July. That's my view. I'm clearly in the minority, but it's not political. So there are those who are kind of saying that we should cut. We should kind of look through all the tariff pain and inflation, perhaps, which will be caused by these tariffs. The levels here, yesterday the markets, of course, ended lower. So we've had to look at the 20-day moving average, which now comes into reckoning, comes into view. So the support for the Nifty at 25,244, which is the 20-day moving average. And, hopefully from this, the 20-day is always an important near-term indicator, a turning point. Hopefully, we make a turn from here, from about 25,244, from close to that. 25,669 is the resistance there. For the Bank Nifty, again, 20-day comes in at 56,630, and the resistance comes in at 57,363. So just some slight tweaking with the market, with what it did yesterday, where it's, indicative start about 135 points. I think, names like TCS and perhaps the larger IT space is one reason why that pressure perhaps is going to come through. But, Surabhi, it was not just TCS. You had lots of news flow. You had Glenmark, you had TCS, and of course you had HUL as well.
No, absolutely. So coming to that, so the short point is that the tariff headline is not the biggest headline for the market this morning. And markets across Asia are simply taking it in their stride. But the reason we need to be, a lot focused on local news flow is because of the kind of company-specific inputs that we've got. Before I get to that, just very quickly on the fund flows, FIIs were buyers to a very small extent, 220 crores of net buying. Domestic institutions were also buyers, about 600 crores of net buying coming in. So far this week, the Nifty is down just under 0.5%. The mid-cap index is down almost 1%. And again, the small-cap index is down 0.4%. For me, the biggest question today is how much of TCS's disappointment is already in the price. There's no two ways about it. TCS was worse than what was anticipated. But, if you look at the IT index, it's already down 2% this week. TCS itself has fallen 1% this week, has fallen 2% so far in July. Now, why am I saying it's worse than expected? We were going with an expectation of 1.4% constant currency revenue decline. What has happened is a 3.3% constant currency revenue decline. Not just that, the management commentary, there is delay in decision-making. Clients are deferring deals. That's continued into Q1. They are not yet sure about wage hikes. They've not made a decision on wage hikes. But they're saying there's a lot of pent-up demand. So once the macro issues and uncertainties around tariff clear, TCS says it's confident of getting more business back and getting the growth back on track. So watch for TCS. Glenmark is a big news. And remember, yesterday the Glenmark stock was up 5%. It's a major, major R&D breakthrough for the company. They are out-licensing an under-development drug, which is called ISB 2001, to AbbVie. They're going to be getting $700 million upfront. And then they could potentially get over $1 billion in milestone payments if this drug continues to do well during the course of development. And keep an eye out on Z as well, because the promoters were looking to get shareholder approval to get those warrants, which could be converted to equity. It could lead to their shareholding going up. Guess what? Shareholders have voted thumbs down, not in favor of it. So another stock that's in news. So Nigel, my sense is it's going to be local company-specific news flow that'll keep us really busy today.
Well, that's right. Yesterday, we ended with a cut of around 120 points. And today, we're going to follow that up with a 140-point gap down, going by what the GIFT 50 is suggesting. My gut is today, we recover from the day's low and probably we end the day closer to around the flat line or maybe in the green. That's the gut feeling going by the kind of price action. The reason I say that is we ended lower yesterday. The India VIX remains at very, very subdued levels. And that's a positive indicator, actually, when the Nifty ends low as well as the VIX cools off. Well, moving to what the FIs did in yesterday's trading session. Interesting times, right? In yesterday's trade, they added some mild short positions, both on index futures as well as on stock futures, while they unbound some long positions. You know, you wanted some shorts in the system. You have got that wish. Now you have 75% of their positions on the short side. And if you look at it in absolute terms as well, at the start of the series, we were saying the FIs are mildly net short. Now that number is moving towards that golden mark, which is around 100,000 short contracts from the FIs itself. So just take a look at that. The FI positioning, close to around 85,000 contracts. Well, this perfectly tells you the picture. While you have the clients, they are net long. Just take a look at their long positions. It's moved to around 55,000 contracts. This combination is something I normally like. So I think there are some shorts in the system. We open gap down. There is a probability that we see some kind of recovery, provided we, protect the first hour lows. Moving to the options data then, since we're not getting any big move, it appears there's a short straddle at play. What is that? You write the same strike, call as well as put, and you pocket the premium, which in this case is close to around 300 rupees or thereabouts. So from the 25,400 odd mark, you add 300 points and you deduct 300 points. And that's giving you a broad range. On the downside, the 25,100 will be important. On the upside, 25,700 or thereabouts. So that's the broad range. For the day, this 20-day MA, by the time we wind up today, I want to see the Nifty, protect this level. So this is the line in the sand for the day. By the end of today, you want to end about that. Otherwise, we're pretty much in this range. On the upside, the Nifty has not been able to make higher highs. So I'd like it to get past this 25,524. It's a little bit distance away, going by the fact that we're going to be starting off in the red. But I'll keep an eye out on that mark. Stocks that I'm looking at, well, Glenmark, as you all mentioned, it's a major, major global licensing deal. However, the stock is up close to around 18% just in the last 1 month. From the recent close, it's seen a big rally. The other factors, this open interest build-up has been massive. So there's big long addition out there. And also delivery-based buying has been seen ahead of this event. The short point is the street was sniffing something that's come about. So maybe chasing today's gap up, which could be as much as 10%, may not be such a wise decision just for today's trade. It's a positive, but maybe in the near term, some part of that is already factored in because monetization will take time. And finally, HUL, there's a change at the helm. The street is quite optimistic about that. And institutional holding in the stock actually is relatively lower in comparison to the benchmark itself. So the street really believes it's going to be good. Expect a bit of a pop-up and then we'll wait for delivery on that front. But as I said earlier, tinge of green I'm wearing today. The market's opening up in the red. Let's see whether or not we see a bit of recovery out there.
All right, tinge of green and running shoes. I don't think...
Don't get me into trouble, Prashant. Don't get me into trouble.
I don't think our viewers can see that. So just in case it doesn't pan out, run.
Jordan's.
Run towards the green side. Maybe,